The Invisible Chaperone, the gummy bear, tasted like synthetic strawberry and a bad decision. Elias chewed it vigorously, washed it down with lukewarm tap water, and waited for the universe to crack open. He was sitting on the floor of his cluttered living room, staring at a dusty fern. 40 minutes later, the fern started to wiggle. Its fronds uncurled like green tongues, tasting the air. "She's thirsty, you know," a voice said. It was a raspy, sophisticated voice, like someone smoking a pipe in a library. Elias jumped. Sitting on his leather armchair was a man who definitely hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. He was tall, impossibly thin, and wearing a tuxedo that seemed to be made of shifting velvet shadows. Where his face should have been, there was only a smooth, porcelain surface. No eyes, no nose, just a polite, blank oval. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm Barnaby," the figure said, crossing his long legs. "Your chaperone. You bought the ticket, Elias." "I'm the tour guide." Elias blinked. He knew, in the rational part of his brain currently hiding in a bunker, that Barnaby wasn't real. But the psychedelic part of his brain, the part currently running the show, accepted this immediately. "Okay, Barnaby. What do we do?" "Well, the walls are melting," Barnaby said, gesturing with a hand that had too many fingers. "We should probably leave before we drown in the wallpaper." Elias looked. The floral pattern on his wall was dripping downward, pooling on the carpet like pastel mud. "Good point." They stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the sky was a bruised shade of purple. Elias's car was parked on the street, but Barnaby scoffed. No, not the metal box," Barnaby said, his voice echoing slightly. "We take the wind bus." "The wind bus." "Exactly." Barnaby pointed to an empty patch of sidewalk. A shimmering, translucent bus made of glass and light materialized out of thin air. It had no wheels. It hovered slightly above the concrete. Elias stepped on. The seats were made of clouds. He sat by the window. Barnaby sat next to him, his blank face somehow conveying an air of smug satisfaction. "Where are we going?" Elias asked as the bus lurched forward, floating through the neighborhood. "To the lost and found," Barnaby said. The cityscape began to warp. The buildings stretched like taffy, elongating into the sky. Streetlights became pulsating jellyfish tethered to the pavement, their light drifting in lazy currents. People on the sidewalk weren't people anymore. They were walking bundles of glowing yarn, trailing strings of memories behind them. "Look at them," Barnaby whispered. All tangled up. The wind bus drifted into a park, bypassing the gates and floating over the grass. The trees were singing, a low, baritone hum that vibrated in Elias's chest. The ground beneath them turned into a chessboard of black and white tiles, each tile rippling like liquid. "Get off here," Barnaby commanded. Elias stepped off the bus onto the chessboard grass. In the center of the clearing stood a giant, rusty filing cabinet, 30 feet tall. "This is the Department of Misplaced Thoughts," Barnaby said, straightening his bow tie. "You have a few things to collect." Elias approached the cabinet. The drawers were labeled with feelings: first-grade humiliation, the smell of grandma's house, ambition, and used. "Open the red one," Barnaby suggested, floating beside Elias. Elias pulled the giant handle. The drawer slid open with a sound like a thunderclap. Inside, there was no paper. There was a scene, a living, breathing diorama of Elias at 7 years old, catching a baseball. He looked so happy. He looked unburdened. "I forgot about this day," Elias whispered. "You didn't forget," Barnaby said, his voice softer now. "You just filed it away to make room for taxes and anxiety. Take it." Elias reached in. His hand didn't hit wood or metal. It sank into the memory. He felt the leather of the ball, the grit of the dirt. He pulled his hand back, and the feeling lingered, a warm, golden glow in his chest. "Why are you helping me?" Elias asked, turning to the faceless man. Barnaby tilted his head. "Because you can't be whole if you're leaking. And you've been leaking for a long time, Elias." Suddenly, the sky began to unzip. A giant zipper appeared in the clouds, tearing the purple fabric of the night apart. Behind the sky, there was only blinding, pure white light. "That's the exit," Barnaby said. "Or the entrance. Depends on how you look at it." "I don't want to go yet," Elias said, panicked. The peak was hitting hard. the waves of ego dissolution crashing over him. I'm scared. Barnaby reached out with his multi-fingered hand and placed it on Elias's shoulder. The touch felt solid, real, and anchoring. You're not alone, Barnaby said. I'm just the part of you that isn't afraid. Lean on me. Elias closed his eyes and focused on the pressure of the hand. The fear transformed into awe. The white light didn't burn, it cleansed. He felt his edges blur, merging with the light, with the chessboard grass, with the singing trees. He was the light. He was the music. He was Elias, and he was also Barnaby. Time became a flat circle. Minutes felt like eons, and hours passed in a blink. Slowly, the white light faded. The zipper in the sky sealed itself back up. The chessboard grass returned to being regular green turf. The giant filing cabinet dissolved into a gazebo in the park. Elias was sitting on a bench. It was cold. The sun was beginning to crest over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of peach and gray. He looked to his left. The seat was empty. There was no Barnaby. No tuxedo made of shadows. No faceless guide. Elias felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it almost winded him. He missed his friend. He missed the safety of that presence. He stood up, his legs shaky, his mouth dry. He began the walk back to his apartment. The world was still buzzing slightly. The cracks in the sidewalk were still breathing, just a little, but the heavy lifting was done. As he walked, he touched his shoulder. The spot where Barnaby had gripped him still felt warm. He realized then that Barnaby hadn't left. The voice that had been the guide, the calm, the fearless, the wise, was still there. It was just quieter now, settled back into the folds of his own mind, no longer needing a face or a tuxedo to be heard. Hydrate, Elias whispered to himself, a small smile touching his lips. Vessel needs water. He walked home, the echo of his imaginary friend guiding him back to reality.